watching on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, drop your comments down below, share it with anyone that you think might be interested. We're seeing more and more engagement with the episodes and clips that are going up on YouTube. So yeah, please make sure to continue all of that engagement if you can. And for those listening on Spotify, Apple, or any of the other podcasting platforms, please follow, give us a 5-star review. All of that stuff helps with the algorithms and helps grow the podcast. So yeah, really appreciate it if you do that. Let's get into what everyone's really waiting for, the Arsenal segment, right? All right, we'll start off in chronological order because I know you've had the second game already, which we'll cover quickly at the end of this segment. But let's start off with the big game that everyone wants to hear your opinions on, Jonts. Bournemouth 2, Arsenal 0. So, I mean, at the beginning of the game, I've seen some analysis on it, and some people are just like, Arsenal were terrible throughout, etc. Which, to be honest, when I was watching the game, I didn't really feel like that. In the first half especially, I feel like it was quite even. And I don't actually think you were that terrible. I don't think your passing was good as it normally is. And I think what you gave away a lot of passes and you weren't quite as slick. And you definitely missed like an Odegaard type 10 in your midfield 3 that was actually going to create stuff. I think bringing in Mikel Merino alongside Partey and Rice, it kind of made your midfield more solid, but not necessarily have that kind of that cutting edge to create stuff. So I think you were solid and you were decent. You didn't create too much, but I don't think it was that abysmal, right? Obviously, the big moment, Trossard gives away a really sloppy back pass to Saliba, puts him in no man's land. Evan Nilsson's through. Saliba kind of, it wasn't even a big nudge or a pullback or anything, but he pulls him back. Evan Nilsson drops. The referee gives a yellow, and then VAR in his ear says, "Go and check the monitor." He has a look, overturns it, gives Saliba a straight red, and you're down to 10 men for the third time in the Premier League this season already. But to be honest, that first half still ended with both of you guys having chances, right? Mourinho had a really good chance to score. Semenyo and Tavernier both had chances as well, but it was kind of still up in the air. Second half continued in a similar way. Semenyo, man, I will say though, he looks like a real player, you know. He was causing you a lot of problems, even with 11 and 10 men. He was really good. But I would say you guys still had the biggest chance first in that second half when Martinelli came on for Trossard and he's clean through and he misses that golden opportunity to put you guys ahead. Strikes it pretty central and Kepa manages to make, even Kepa's able to make that save. And then, yeah, Bournemouth go on, score from, it was a really nice little corner actually. You guys are known for your set pieces, but it was Bournemouth in this case who scored a really nice worked corner. Christie putting it in the top bins. And then some more slightly dodgy defending from Kiwior, who came on afterwards, put Raya in a sticky situation. He pulls down Evan Nilsson and Kluivert scores the penalty 2-0. So the stand-up performance is good. You correct me if I'm wrong. Calafiori looked okay. I was quite impressed with him in terms of, he was overlapping almost Ben White-esque in that game. And if I was an Arsenal fan, I'd be quite positive about that. I know there's not too many positives, but he looked decent. And then, yeah, obviously the negatives, Saliba obviously getting sent off, but we'll get into what you think about that decision. And then Trossard for the back pass, obviously. And then, he was just trying some Hollywood balls and stuff that just, like, I don't know what he was thinking about. It wasn't his greatest performance. But, yeah, first of all, Johns, what did you make of the game? Get your rant out now, and then we'll get into the talking points, obviously, around the red card and such after
that. I just thought we were I don't think we deserve to win. And the red card obviously changes the game massively. But in the same way, as you kind of said, it's still 0-0. And we've got enough quality to continue to cause them issues even with 10 men. The issue is that just whoever gets the first goal is probably going to go and win that match. And particularly Bournemouth. If Bournemouth go and get that first goal with 11 versus 10, it's unlikely we're ever going to be able to come back, right? So it was a pretty even game from then on. We just looked poor offensively again. I'm really not liking like the one-dimensional nature of our attacking football right now, but I kind of understand it. If we've got, Saka out, if we've got Odegaard out, I do understand that. But I think with last year's squad, we would have had more versatility in terms of how we go forward than we do this season. And I agree with you on, the Marino, Rice, Partey midfield. There's not enough to that for me. And when you combine that with an attack of Havertz, Trossard, and Martinelli, or Sterling, whoever it is, I just don't think there's enough dynamism to that attack to really cause good teams any problems. I think we still could have gone and beaten Bournemouth because I don't think they're, in that upper echelon of teams. So I still think even if we had not got a man sent off, I think we probably would have gone on to win that game. Even if I don't think we played well, I still think we would have had enough to win the game. The problem is when we come up against Liverpool next week, if that's the attack that we're going forward with, I'm sorry, that's not getting past Van Dijk. That's not getting past. I mean, right now, what's looking like a really good pairing in Konate and Van Dijk. I know Konate's got the bozo gene in him, but Van Dijk has the anti-bozo gene in him, and it will try his best to stop Konate from doing anything stupid. So I just don't think there's enough to that attack, and as a result, I think everyone's comparing it to who we've been for the last 2 years and saying, what the fuck is this football? Like, what kind of football are we playing? And why have we exchanged a squad that we thought was quite creatively dynamic for a squad that is just 7-foot brick shit houses that can just play the ball across the ground over and over again? Like, that's the part that is confusing me a little bit. And then it's no mistake then that we look pretty one-dimensional going forward. So overall, it's not like we were, we definitely deserve to lose or anything else like that, from an 11 versus 11. But if we're supposed to be title contenders, this is not good enough football. I'm sorry. And so when we do go and lose and we do get a man sent off and we end up losing 2-0, it's very easy for people to point their fingers and say, you played crap anyway. What are you talking about? Like, you didn't look great. It's not like you're playing them off the park. So, you kind of probably deserve a 2-0, even if Bournemouth weren't like exactly inspiring themselves, right? It's not like Bournemouth played us off the park or anything. So, yeah, overall, I'm very disappointed with the performance. But at the same time, you've got to give props to Bournemouth. They did it. A lot of teams can't necessarily do it against big teams, even with the man sent off. So you've got to give props to them. And I think, again, Semenyo was really good. He's in my FPL team. I wasn't hoping he'd do very well this week. But he looked really, really good. And I can't really say too much about, any of our players really from a positive perspective. I think Calafiori was okay, yeah. But I don't want to come out of a 2-0 loss to Bournemouth and say if someone was good. I think everyone was crap. And they need to be way better going into the next couple of games. And I mean, the Shakhtar game we'll get onto later, they weren't much better. So they've got to buck up a bit and do a bit better next game, because against Liverpool, we're going to get bloody punished. And I could see if we play like we're playing now, we're going to get beat 3-0. So
wow, big shout already. I hear you, man. And I don't want to go down this narrative of, it's been coming because of the performances, but I actually don't think this game, like you said, I think the first goal wins this, because I actually think if you got the first goal, we know what we've been, praising Arsenal about this season, defensive solidity. You telling me if you got the first goal, let's say Martinelli scores that, and Arteta just goes, we're going 2 banks of 4, and I don't know, Havertz tucking deep or Trossard tucking deep to make it a front 5 in midfield, and just staying compact and tight, you're not going to be able to see out a 1-0. I actually think you would. I reckon you would have won that game if you scored the first goal. But like you said, conceding the first goal, I think so quickly after you had that Martinelli chance as well, I think it just took the stuffing out of you. I think it was just like, oh my God, we should be 1-0 up, and now we're 1-0 down, and we've got 10 men. Long day. I don't know if we can come back from that. And the injuries just also meant you just didn't have the stardust to pull something out of the bag. No Saka, no Odegaard. Those are basically your 2 most creative players, right? And they're the ones that, Saka in particular with the set pieces, Odegaard just with the overall play. Like that's what gets you out of jail against, let's say, Villa when things were looking a bit ropey earlier in the season, or against Leicester, Southampton, where things were also again looking a little bit sticky. Those are the kind of guys that have pulled you out the slums when things are looking a bit rough, and you didn't have them available this week or that in that game in particular. And some little mistakes here and there were punished this time. And I think, it was going to happen if those performances kept on coming up. But I won't go too deep on this. You've been playing poor, and now you got the result that you deserved. I think equally you could have won this game, and it just happened to be that Bournemouth scored first, and like you said, that put you in a really difficult position to turn the result around. Let's get into the red card then, the obvious one, right? We obviously then had the Liverpool-Chelsea game the following day. Tosin pulls back. Who was it that he pulled back? Was it Jota? Yeah, I think it was Jota. He pulls back Jota, kind of in a similar position on the halfway line or just into his half. He gets a yellow card. For the Saliba one, he pulls back Evan Nilsson after that pullback pass from Trossard, and he gets a yellow card as well. But then the referee goes to the VAR monitor and overturns it to a red card. First of all, do you think it deserved a red card? And do you think Saliba's the one to blame for making that decision, or do you think the majority of the blame falls on Trossard?
I'm in two minds. What I mean, like in the football that I grew up playing and watching, it is a red card because the rule was last man's a red card. Doesn't matter what the context is, it's a red card. And I'm going to be honest with you. I think my argument is that we've added too much specificity to the rules now, where everyone's always like, yeah, but on everything, to the point where we're like, oh, but that wasn't a goal scoring opportunity, and now the refs always say it's a goal scoring opportunity, or denial of goal scoring opportunity is the red card. And before it was so simple, and maybe there was like certain situations where it was unfair and whatever else, but it was really simple. It was like, if you double foot someone, it's a red card. If you're last man, it's a red card. If you handball in front of the goal, it's a red card. And it was just black and white rules. There wasn't any specificity to why a last man was a red card. It was just, it's a red card if you're last man, right? And we didn't have to, read between the lines too much. We just said, all right, he was studs up at knee height. It's a red card. And that's that. It's not, oh, he's endangering the opponent, and, oh, he's, out of control, and all this bollocks that they've added, like in terms of language, to the different reasons why people get red cards now. And I think with this one, it's the same argument. Like I've seen loads of Arsenal fans basically say it's not a goal scoring opportunity because he's on the bloody halfway line, and Ben White is known to be really, really quick, and is probably going to be able to get the ball. All of that context is great. I understand it, fine, but at the end of the day, like, I just think we should go back to a time where it was a lot more simple, black and white rules. Last man's a red card, and in that case, I think that's a red card. But it's because of all these stupid, like, additional clauses and added context that they've added into all these rules that people can argue, why the hell is that a red card? And if I take like devil's advocate and kind of play that role for a lot of Arsenal fans that have kind of been saying this, is number one, it's not a goal scoring opportunity. Right, that's a ridiculous thing to say that it's a goal-scoring opportunity, because then you could argue that literally any foul is a denial of a goal-scoring opportunity if there is a 0.0405 XG chance that someone's going to score that goal. Right, it's mental. It's like saying, oh, if you tackle someone on the edge of the box, regardless of who's around you, that's also got a denial of a goal-scoring opportunity because they could suddenly turn into bloody Gvardiol and slap it into the top corner. Yeah, they could do that, and someone could run from the halfway line, beat off a really fast defender, and go round the goalkeeper and score. Sure, but I guarantee the XG of doing that is not very high. So from my point of view, like, that, it's not a goal scoring opportunity, and I don't think the Tosin opportunity either was a goal scoring opportunity. Right? I think a lot of players could have got back to save that one too. The goalkeeper could have been like Manuel Neuer, come off the line and done whatever to get the ball, get rid of the ball. There's loads of things that could have potentially happened. And I'm saying, unless it's like a 50% plus chance of scoring from that position, I don't think you can say it's a goal scoring opportunity. So from that point of view, like, I agree with Arsenal fans. I don't think it is a goal scoring opportunity. The second point is, he's not really last man because Ben White is really close and could have gone and got the ball. And I saw Sky Sports was trying to defend this, and it kind of just goes to show how screwed up the mainstream media is now in terms of the PGMOL. It almost reminds me of like American politics, where you've got Fox News and whoever else that are so blatantly supporting one candidate over the other. And in this case, Sky Sports is so blatantly supporting the PGMOL, like it's mental, because they did like a graphic that showed Evan Nilsson's top speed this season versus Ben White's top speed this season, completely ignoring the fact that Evan Nilsson would have to run with the ball, which I guarantee if you looked up Evan Nilsson's top speed while running with the ball, it would have been significantly lower than without the ball, right? I think everybody knows that the defender usually always has a bit of an advantage because they're not having to run with the ball. So I think if you actually did a proper comparison, you'd probably see that Ben White did have the chops to get back because he's done it before. So Sky Sports completely screwed up. I don't need you to be the mouthpiece for PGMOL. Just let them deal with it. They're the ones that have screwed it up. Let them do it, right? So again, to take that stance of the Arsenal fans that I've heard, Ben White could have got back. It's not a goal scoring opportunity. So from those rules, maybe it shouldn't be a red. But then on top of that, the fact that the referee saw it, gave a yellow card, and then is it clear and obvious? And if it is, why is it clear and obvious in the Arsenal game but not clear and obvious in the Chelsea game? Again, it comes down to, are you actually following the rules that you set out? You said at the beginning of the season that there was a much higher threshold now, or a much higher bar set for when VAR would intervene, right? Which came to, from my point of view, I took to mean it needs to be even more clear and even more obvious for them to get involved. And I'm sorry, I don't think there was anything clear and obvious about that, because it's not as if the referee missed it completely and was turned around and didn't see it, because then VAR could intervene, right? And whatever else. The referee literally saw it, the linesman saw it, and they both decided a yellow card was fair. So in my opinion, from going to from a yellow to a red card, I don't think that was clear and obvious. Right? If it's a double foot challenge above knee height or something, like fair enough, you could go and do that. But like, is that barely even touching the man on the halfway line, essentially? Is that enough to go from a yellow to a red card? If it is, then why isn't Tosin getting sent off for it? And I know I've heard Chelsea fans say, oh, because other defender was closer. That's bollocks. Come on. Like, whether he was a yard closer or not a yard closer, that's total rubbish, right? In my opinion, if that's the thing that you're calling out as the reason why it was yellow to a red, that is nowhere near a big enough threshold to say it was clear and obvious. Because then we've got to start measuring how far away is the next defender to the ball. And then they've got to set a rule for that. Oh, if he's within 2 meters, it's not a red card. If he's outside of 2 meters, it is a red card. Like, what are we doing if that's the specificity and the nitpickiness that we're going to do to try and say one of them deserved the red versus one of them deserving a yellow? So again, I'm probably like speaking in all kinds of directions right now, but I just think, in my old school opinion, it should be a red card and both of them should be a red card because they're last man. And that was the rule back in the day. It was, if you're last man, it's a red card. Don't argue with me. Don't ask why. It's a red card. But the PGMOL, the FA, whoever sets these rules, they've made it so much more specific now because they think they're trying to be fair that they've actually gone the other way and made it less fair. I'd much rather they just bring back the old school rules of yesterday where they just said, if you do this, it is a red card. There's no why, there's no how, there's no what. If you do it, it's a red card. Finished. End of conversation. Hold it. But they don't. They make everything so subjective now. And as a result, no decision they make is clear anymore. So I just think we're going to be having these conversations over and over again. But I mean, like, if you look outside of it, the fact that one team has got 3 red cards, of which all 3 were very questionable, and there's like big camps on both sides to say whether they are or are not a red card. The fact that one team has got that, while the other team that they're competing with has done those exact same things in past seasons and even in this season and not got red cards, is mental. Then you add on to the fact that they got away with the Bernardo thing again to win them the game in the last minute. Like, I'm sorry, I'm not going to come out and say that it is corrupt, but if it's not corrupt, you guys are doing a job of trying to show that it's not corrupt. right? You are like, this is some WWE storyline that you guys have created. And it almost seems like it's on purpose. So if you're not corrupt, you are just actual morons. And if you are corrupt, then get the fuck out of it. And I hope that you get found out for it eventually. Because, yeah, I mean, I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist with tinfoil hat man and all this other stuff, but like too many coincidences now, man. It's too many. And I've seen loads of other fans that aren't supporters of Arsenal literally saying like it's getting a bit far now. Like something feels like it's going on. So yeah, I'll end my rant there, but I'm not happy with it. I can see why, people are saying Arsenal fans don't complain, he's last man, whatever else. I get that, but at the same time, it's just like the circumstances that surround it absolutely stink.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, man, because I think I like you yearn for simpler times. Like, remember when it was obvious goal scoring opportunities being denied that you would get a red card. Like, you're clearly the last man. No one else is around, and you chop someone or you take them out. Like, obviously, red card, right? I can remember some incidents where that's happened. I think when things are in that grey area and they've got all these sub clauses and sub context going on, I think it would be easier just to say blanket yellow card. Because I think then the tossing thing happens, the Saliba thing happens, you give a yellow card in every scenario. And I don't think managers and fans would be upset with that if you clearly said, look, if you are clearly the last man, like there's daylight, and you are just one-on-one with the person and you chop them or you take them down or you stop them, then it should be a red card. If there's any, if you've got two fullbacks either side of you, slightly behind you, but they're free to come and cover, I don't think you should say yellow. I don't think you should give red cards for that, because there's too many variables involved in that scenario, right? Like, Evan Nielsen could slip. Ben White could come back and cover, right? He could get a burst of pace, like you said, because he's running without the ball and Evan Nielsen's running with the ball. There's loads of context around that, right? That I think you're painting and adding in yourself by saying it's and giving it a red card and saying it's a goal scoring opportunity, right? But in this day and age, I think we've got used to the fact that would be a red card. So I don't know. In a weird way, I didn't look at it and think that's an outrageous decision. That's terribly wrong. But I don't like the way that it was. Like, I don't like how it got there. I don't like people's explanations about it and stuff like that. I think all of that stuff is just bluster. And like you said, you're unnecessarily making things overcomplicated. And you're going to have a situation literally the next day or the next week or the next month where something similar happens and someone sees it in a different way because it's so subjective. And so I would rather just go back to the times that we used to have, like you said, where if it's daylight or whatever and you're clearly the last man. I remember vividly like an Ole Gunnar Solskjaer one where he's like running back and he's clearly the last man. The guy's just like got a complete counter by himself and he runs back and just chops him from behind and he just walks off. He knows he's getting a red because it was clearly the last man and he's come and taken him out. If that happens, red card, happy with that. And I think everyone would be happy with that. They understand it. But when there's so much like, he was the last man, goal scoring opportunity, will someone cover or not cover? I think as soon as you start getting into that minutia, just give a yellow card. Then it's clearly not an obvious goal scoring opportunity if you have to consider all of them factors, right? I just don't think it's worth it. I think they're unnecessarily making it difficult for themselves by even going down this route with this particular kind of decision. But yeah, in this day and age,
the optics of it look terrible. And we had this conversation last week about Ineos, right? And how the decisions that they make, they're clearly not considering the optics of things properly before they make those decisions, right? And again, I'm not saying that everything you have to look at the optics of it before you make a decision, but when you are in such like the public limelight, and particularly if you've been getting a lot of scrutiny, it kind of it's within your best interest to look at the optics and make sure everything looks good from the external perspective before you start doing things. And I think the PGMOL are worse than Ineos when it comes to the optics of things. Because on top of that, they've got a Liverpool fan reffing an Arsenal game the week before we play Liverpool. And I'm not saying again that they're corrupt, but that is optically stinky. Like, how do you not think of that? Have you ever like looked on football Twitter and thought, what could people come up with before or after this game in the end? Especially if you're going to have all of this crazy controversy in the game. It just feels like the PGMOL do such a terrible job optically. And that's why they go and get Michael Owen and Sky Sports to be their mouthpieces and Gary Neville, whoever else, to try and say that they're right all the time. Because they know that optically they've made so many poor decisions that they need to try and flood the market with as much just absolute pundit bollocks as possible to try and trick fans into believing something else. And I think the problem is the situations are so ridiculous that even if a well-respected pundit says they're in support of that, like normal people are just like, nah, I don't care who you are. You could be a 5-time Ballon d'Or winner. You're talking out your ass. And that's my point, is like PGMOL have done such a bad job. They are just so subpar and so poor in terms of their standard that, like, even if they're not corrupt, like they deserve to be like completely banned from ever being anywhere near the sport again. Like, I'd rather the two clubs before a match negotiate, oh, let's go and get Billy from down the pub. He supports a completely different team. Let's let him ref. Like, I think that could actually even work out better. I don't even know why we need to have the PGMOL or any like refereeing, officiating body anymore, because honestly, it's so bad. Like, it's that like Gary O'Neill's out here again this week saying that he's getting screwed over by stuff again. I guarantee he'll go and get a massive fine again, despite the fact that the points that he make are very valid. You know, we had this whole thing last year of everyone like kind of coming out and basically saying the PGMOL are incompetent, and somehow they've survived again. And they're doing the same thing again this year. The first 5-6 weeks, they enforce a bunch of rules and then suddenly just forget that they exist afterwards. It's the same stuff every year, and we just like let it go as if this is how football should be played. It's so bad, and I just don't think, because of the tribalism in football, I just don't think we'll ever be able to get over it. But really, what I'd love to see is PGMOL is completely disbanded. Right? Defund the PGMOL. Forget the police. PGMOL, defund all of them, and let's build it from the ground up again. And in the meantime, Billy from down the pub, he can do all the games that we can get him on.
Yeah, Billy, the Batman signal's been put out for you, mate. We're looking for you, Billy. We need you. You're going to have to be available every Saturday going forward until the end of May. So don't go on your holidays or anything like that. You're going to be busy, mate. But no, I hear you. I think, there needs to be some reform around it, for sure. And I watched the stick to football thing with Howard Webb, and he comes across a nice chap, and I understand what he's saying about the incremental increases in decisions being made correctly. The issue is just there's just too many howlers, and there's just too many subjective calls happening still, and that's the problem. I think a lot of us have is there shouldn't be as much subjectivity when it comes to refereeing decisions beyond scenarios that cannot be objective, right? Like, there's some types of situations in a football game that will always be a decision call, 50-50, and it goes one way or the other. The problem I think a lot of us have is we know that there are all these rules and, like you said, super specific sub-clauses and sub-context around rules, and yet still it doesn't feel like they get to the right decision, or they're taking a really wayward process to be able to get to a decision in the first place. And it's just too much money in the game, is too many eyes on the game, too many people's emotions and livelihoods and everything, sanity tied into football in the Premier League, that you get stuff like this wrong so frequently. But I hear you. Anyway, who do you blame though for? Is there any blame at all on that situation in terms of Saliba or Trossard? Because I've seen really opposite opinions for both. I've seen some people say Trossard's back pass is criminal, and he completely stitches Saliba up, and he's in a lose-lose situation. And then I still see other people say Saliba, that's not true. They disagree and basically think Saliba could have just let him run through and not touch him, with the idea that you've obviously got two fullbacks covering, and then also Raya could still save it as well. There's it's not condemning yourselves to conceding a goal guaranteed if he lets him through. Where do you fall on that? Just a quick answer before we move on.
They both deserve blame. Trossard created it, so I give him slightly more blame, and it's also one of the things that I've complained about Trossard the most, and why I don't like seeing him anywhere near our midfield, because his pass accuracy is absolute dog. He misplaces the ball so frequently. I don't ever want to see him in a non-goal scoring opportunity touch the ball. Like, he's really good when it comes to getting the ball and smashing one into the top corner, but he is not good anywhere else in terms of passing, particularly in the build-up play, and particularly in that situation, being so close to our defensive line. It stinks. I never want to see him anywhere near a direct pass to any of our defenders, because he does do that, and it happens frequently. So I'm going to put slightly more blame on him, but it's like 60-40. Because at the same time, I do blame Saliba, because Saliba he just has to know better not to do that. But the problem is, the problem that I've got with giving Saliba too much blame, and why the people that are making that argument that it's all Saliba's fault are completely off bases. Did you see how much he touched Evanilson? Like, it's literally a whisper. Like, he barely even touches him, and he's gone down. And what Saliba's supposed to do? It's almost as if Saliba, what they're basically asking is that Saliba just runs in the other direction, or just stops dead and does this. And if he did do that, everyone would absolutely crucify him and say, why isn't he trying to put a challenge in? Why isn't he? Like, it's a lose-lose situation, because Saliba is literally in no man's land. He's in one of the worst situations you can be in as a defender, right? There's no situation apart from him just outright winning the ball where he doesn't get criticism. If he lets the guy go past him, everyone says, what the hell? You're trying to say this guy's your generational centre-back, one of the best in the league, and he can't even do that. Like, everyone's going to crucify him for that. If he gets sent off, everyone says, what an idiot. He's got to be small. He's got to be smarter than that. He's got to, know to let the guy go past him, and blah, 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 blah. Like, you can't win unless you just outright win the ball, which unfortunately, most of the time he does. But in this one certain case, he can't. So, like, from that point of view, I just don't, as a result of that, I can't put more blame on him. Because look at Trossard, right? Trossard could have done about 1,000 other things that would not have led to a goal or a sending off, right? He chose the one and only way where he could have completely f***ed it up and made himself look like right? He found the one and only way that he could have done it. Even if he just loses the ball, he just gets dispossessed, we're in a better position than he ended up leaving Saliba in, right? So he's literally found the one and only way for himself to look like an arse. Whereas Saliba literally has one and only way not to look like an arse in that situation. So from my point of view, there's no way that you can put more blame on Saliba. But again, if we want to call him a generational centre-back, we want to call him one of the best centre-backs in the world, Real Madrid want him and all this other stuff, then probably we're going to put higher expectations on him, right? To win those duels against players like Evanilson. We're not talking Mbappe here, right? So, I get that. From that point of view, we do need to say, Saliba, you've got to be even better. But if you just think from a basic football input standard, how many centre-backs actually come out of that situation looking good? I would say maybe there's one that would, and that's Van Dijk, right? How many midfielders or players that have the ball in Trossard's position come out of that looking good? I'm going to say 99% of them. Maybe Calvin Phillips is one of the only ones who doesn't come out of that situation looking good. Maybe Casemiro. But almost everybody else plays a simple pass or loses the ball in a less dangerous way than he did it. The only worst way that he could have done it is if he just booted it straight into our own net. What other terrible thing could he have done? He literally chose one of the worst things he could have done. So Trossard's getting more blame, but I'm going to put a bit of blame on Saliba too.
Yeah, I think Trossard naturally should get a bit more blame because he's a more experienced player. He's 28, 29. He'd been making stupid passes the whole game, to be honest, until that point. That one was just the icing on the cake in a negative sense in terms of how bad it was. But obviously, I don't like going overboard on that kind of situation because it's still retrievable. It does put someone in a really sticky situation in this case, and kind of put Saliba in a lose-lose. So I agree with you. I think they both deserve blame, probably slightly more to Trossard, but Saliba's blame is just naivety. I'll be honest with you, it's just naivety. And the reason why you said Van Dijk would probably get it right is because I think Saliba's got that potential to reach those kind of levels, right? And I think he does flirt around those kind of levels quite frequently, which is why he gets so much praise. But in this particular situation, I thought he showed a little bit of naivety around it because I agree with you. You know, the only way he comes
really high level in terms of what naivety means, though.
No. I agree.
99.9% of defenders do that or worse, right? So that's the kind of naivety we're talking about. Like he's naive in comparison to world class defenders. I'm fine with that.
But it's obviously I'm not only talking about the world class level. I just mean like maybe a more experienced defender decides to take a different. Like take the other option, which is let him go through, and then maybe another player pulls you out of the mud, right? I know that's not something that puts you out of control, which I agree is an uncomfortable thing for a centre back, and for sure you would get pelters if Evan Nilsson went through and scored. But I think in that particular situation, the right decision was to probably let Evan Nilsson go through because it's Evan Nilsson. It's not Haaland, right? So you've got to hope that Evan Nilsson either misses, Raya saves it, or a defender comes and covers. Because I think those options, sure, it could go wrong. But I think that a more experienced centre-back may, I'm not saying definitely does, but may decide to do that, which I think would have been the lesser of two evils, right? It still could go wrong.
I agree with you, but you've got the hindsight of him being sent off to say that. Right, like if he lets him through and he smashes it top corner, everyone says, "Oh, you should have tried to tackle him."
Yeah, but 1-0.
That's my point. Is that's my point. Is that because he got red carded, it's very easy for us to go and say, "Yes, he's naive now." But if he'd let him through and he goes on and scores the goal, people are going to blame Saliba. Probably still will blame Trossard more, depending on how the goal is scored. Right? They'll probably still blame Trossard more. That's fine. But they'll still say, this is your generational centre-back. He needs to be better than that. So it's really easy in hindsight after him being sent off in a very contentious sending off, by the way. Right, we still had a large conversation and people are still having conversations now as to whether that was actually a sending off or not. Like, we are holding him to a really high standard here, if that's what we're saying, given the fact that he's been sent off in such a contentious way. Because I guarantee the most experienced centre-back, Sergio Ramos, makes that mistake. Johnny Evans makes that mistake. There's loads of experienced centre-backs. No, I'm saying people that have been in the game for ages, right, make that mistake too. I don't think it's an experience problem as much as it is an intelligence problem and a performance problem. Like, loads of people know in their head, don't touch him, don't touch him, don't touch him. But when push comes to shove, they touch him. And he goes down and they get sent off. Right? It's the emotional and intelligence and situational awareness to say, okay, I'm actually going to control myself and not touch him, which I don't think very many defenders do. Like, I'm literally saying Van Dijk is maybe the only one who's not got a hothead to say, I'm going to go in and try and challenge him.
No, I think Van Dijk is the only guarantee, I would say. I would phrase it that way. I think you can guarantee Van Dijk would, because you've seen his body of work, like he makes the right decision 9.9 times out of 10. He still gets it occasionally wrong, right? But 9.9 times out of 10, he makes the right decision, right? With Saliba, I don't think we can say that he does that 9.9 times out of 10 because he's too young, right? And he hasn't played enough to necessarily say that with his game.
I think based off his record so far, he actually has done it 9 times out of 10. Like, how many other times is this literally his first sending?
No, you're sure. But it's a small sample size, right? It's a much smaller sample size. So, of course you can say that, but it's like going into the world class when someone's been doing it for a short space of time. It makes people feel uncomfortable, right? But my point anyway, I agree with you on that. I'm not disagreeing at all that people would criticize him if he let the player through and he scored. He would obviously get criticized, right? But in the bigger picture, going 1-0 down is still a better situation than taking a red card, unless it's the 89th minute or something like that, where you've got not that much time to hold out, and you can easily.
Yeah, but how does he know it's going to be a red card, though? When it's such a contentious decision, how does he know for sure he's going to get a red card if he does that?
I think
if he literally volleyed my man and kicked him in the head, then yes, he knows he's getting a red card for that. And it's like the Solskjaer thing. He's walking straight off and he's an idiot for doing it. But he barely touches my man and he goes down. How does he even know that's going to be a red card to say he needs to be making a better decision than that? That's why it's like I'm saying to you, it's such a harsh criticism to make of a guy when he's been put into literally there's one way that he gets out of that looking good and not getting any blame. Trossard
I agree.
has 1,000 ways not to be an absolute pillock.
No, I understand the Trossard getting more blame, and I started off this whole thing, my rebuttal to your point with that exact same thing. Trossard is older. He creates a situation as well, so he needs to take the lion's share of the blame for sure. But the Saliba thing, and I agree with you. I still agree with you, but I think there's scales to it. So instead of being like, okay, he comes out and he takes the ball, that's the only way he comes out with credit, agree. But what are the wrong choices, or let's say they're both wrong, right? Or whatever you say, it's a lose-lose. There's one that's got slightly more jeopardy than the other. I agree with you. It's not a clear-cut red either. I don't think
but
it's
the fact that you're having
red.
to explain so much of this just shows how high of a standard you are holding my man to.
No, but it's also just like it's a simple concept, though, isn't it? My concept is not based on those factors, which I agree. I agree with you on those. But the concept is going 1-0 down with 60 minutes or whatever, 70 minutes to repair the situation with 11 men is a much better scenario than being 0-0 with 10 men having to hold out for the whole rest of the game, right? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you disagree with me, and that's fine. We can
if he makes the challenge, right, there's 3 possible outcomes. Number 1 is he gets the ball, and then he gets plaudits, right? Number 2 is he takes the man down, ends up with a yellow card. And number 3 is he takes the man down, ends up with a red card, right? There's possibly also one where he ends up with nothing, but I'm going to take that off the table. He chose that situation, right? One of them is the worst one, right? Is him getting sent off. He literally ended up with the worst of the 3 situations, right? And for a man that mostly makes the right decision in those situations, to be confident and say, you know what, I am going to take the risk because either I'm going to end up with the ball and no problems, a yellow card, but an opportunity stopped, or in the very slim chances I get a red card, that's the risk I'm going to have to take. And unfortunately, for the most part, he actually pays off with those decisions. Right, like they usually work in his favor. In this one scenario, it has not worked in his favor, and as a result, I'm fine to call him naive for doing so because maybe he needs to be a bit more risk averse based off of the circumstances that you're talking about. But I just think it's so harsh to like really put pelters on him and really make the argument that he's naive or inexperienced or this is why he's not world class or whatever else other people have been saying.
Again,
online.
Yeah.
Because Van Dijk literally just got sent off like a week ago. Like in the internationals, right? And barely anyone says anything about that. But again, everyone wants to put the pelters on Saliba and Arsenal because Arsenal fans are obnoxious. I get it. But it's just like, I don't see anyone else's defenders being held anywhere near that standard.
No, I understand what you're saying for other fans for sure. And I haven't been across what other fans have been hammering Saliba about this. I'm just talking about myself, and I think he was naive. And I think if he had taken another decision, then at least you can recover from it. I agree with you that obviously if he makes a challenge, he doesn't get the ball, the ref could see it all types of ways. And there's potential that it could go well, but the problem with that is there's potential it can go very wrong like it did, right? And again, I don't even blame him massively because I don't even think the challenge was like, he didn't do anything cynical. I actually think there's an argument that people could make that he was trying to
foul, man.
Like, no,
accidentally ended up as a foul. He wasn't trying to foul.
That's what I was going to say. Like, I think there is a world where he was actually trying to run out of the way, but just didn't get out of the way quick enough and clipped him very minimally, and then the situation occurred. But either way, I get it. You know, defend your guy. I understand. I also understand your reasoning behind it. But I think it was obviously a big call in the match, and it ended up going badly for him. And also the other thing to factor in, he's going to miss the Liverpool game, right? And if he let the player through, obviously there's no danger of a red card coming in anyway. And wouldn't be missing the game, which I think is also something to factor in. But all right, let's get on to the last couple of things then, which are going to rile you up even more. Arteta's substitution after the sending off, decided to take off Sterling. There's some people I'm hearing that saying Sterling was actually okay, and that he went too defensive too soon. Do you think he was right to make that sub? And if so, what do you think about the people that criticize him about it?
It's just people looking for someone to blame, right? Like, if things go your way, everyone wants to praise Arteta. If things don't go our way, everyone's going to try and find something to blame Arteta about, right? And in this case, he gets put in a sticky situation as a manager with 10 men after however many minutes against Bournemouth, after having like literally 2 previous red cards in the last 7 weeks. And he's got to make decisions. And I agree, maybe he made the wrong one in this, but I think taking off Raheem Sterling, that part of it, I'm totally fine with that. Raheem Sterling's been absolutely balls for every single time he's touched pitch for Arsenal, right? It's to the point where I'm almost thinking we should have made Chelsea give us 100% of his wages, because there's no way that we should be paying any money to have him perform so terribly for our team, right? So that part, that stinks. The whole defensive part, fine. That, again, is holding us to a really high standard, though. That's basically saying, you guys are so good defensively, you don't need your key centre-back in the game. You can play with 3 at the back, 2 of which being, I guess, a left-back and a right-back, even though everyone's going to argue that our left-back and right-backs are basically bloody centre-backs anyway.
Centre-back.
Fine, right? That's totally fine. But that's like, you're holding us to such a high standard to say, oh, a team that's a man down, with their man down being their key centre-back, shouldn't make a defensive substitution to take an attacker off to bring on a defender. Like, that is mental to the fact that everyone's holding Arsenal to such a high standard that we need to go and beat Bournemouth away without Saliba in centre-back, playing basically a 3-5-2 or 3-5-1 or whatever it is, right? That's how crazy the standard is now, right? That we're saying that Arsenal have to go and be able to do that. They won't even let us try and win the game with a 4-4-1. No, you guys are better than that. You're too good. You have to be even better than that. How is that possible? Everyone goes from like having it, they swap so quickly just to support their agenda. Every single time Arsenal fans want to say we're a good team, you say, oh, you never win the Champions League. You've bottled it 2 years in a row. Then every single time Arsenal fans want to say, damn, we're not as good as we think we are. We need to do some things that other teams, normal teams, have to do. Everyone's like, oh no, but you guys have said you're so bloody good. Why can't you go and beat Bournemouth with 10 men and one of your centre backs missing? Like, this is mental. Can we just stick to one? And I get it. It comes from Arsenal fans either blowing our trumpets too much or trying to get the violins out too much. But my God, the way that every single rival fan flip-flops on their agenda to make Arsenal fans and Arsenal as a team look bad in every situation is mental. Like, it is genuinely mental how far and the lengths that everyone goes to do like bloody mental gymnastics to try and say that Arsenal are shit and that our manager's terrible and that we've done this and we've done that. And just everything is negative about us, right? Like Big Steve on the Big Six is saying, oh, but you lot are challenging us. You think you're the best, you blah, 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 blah. Then when something like this happens, you're saying, oh, but when you can't come to the Etihad and win, no. Like, how can you have it both ways? Either we're a good team or a shit team. You can't try and use both arguments to try and get us. So this whole like argument that Arteta went too defensive too quickly, almost every other manager makes a defensive substitution, right? You need to stabilise the game. You're down a man away in the Premier League to a decent team, a mid-table team, right? You need to stabilise the game. So to make an instant substitution to replace this position that you've just lost with somebody who's been absolutely crap in an Arsenal shirt is not mental at all. And the fact that we still had opportunities to score after that is a testament to the fact he made the right decision, right? We ended up losing it because we had to try and go for something and we got a bit sloppy trying to play with 10 men for so long. People are tired, losing concentration. It happens, right? And we end up losing 2-0, right? But he was still trying to go for it. We didn't shut up shop and say, oh, we'll just take a point, right? Trossard, Martinelli was bombing forward, trying to get that goal, couldn't get it. But we definitely did not try and park the bus. So everyone can complain, oh, you just parked the bus with 10 men. Oh, you just do this, what you just do that. So when we do try and go for it and still beat Bournemouth and end up coming out of it with a negative result, everyone's saying, oh, you should have shut up shop again. Or, oh, you should have done this, you should have done that. You cannot win. So I'm not going to entertain the conversation about that. I think it's total shit. He made the right decision. It didn't pay off in the end.
I think the solidity part, because I actually don't think you went super defensive. I just think maybe you took off the wrong person at that time.
Raheem
but
was...
I think I understand Raheem is not ideal, but I think the idea.
Who would you rather take off? Who would you have taken off?
With again, I agree with you. Is a hindsight thing completely. So I'm not saying like in the game I was like you must do this, you must do that, right? I think you can probably have a better view after the dust has settled. But I do think leaving Havertz and Trossard up front, or in those positions, in the attacking positions, right, put you in a little bit of a disadvantage because you didn't have the pace to like. Because really, with 10 men, a team should totally be understandable to go on the counter, right? You 10 men, your attacking threat will most likely come on the counter, right? Because it doesn't matter who you are, unless you're City or prime Barcelona tiki-taka where they could potentially play with 6 men and still try and keep the ball. All other teams will generally try and do counter, right? And I think that's the way you guys tried to set up. The only thing with hindsight is it's tricky to do that with Trossard and Havertz as your two most forward players. So I even agree with the idea.
I could argue that it makes sense to play those, though. I would even argue that it could make sense.
But there's no threat over the top on the counter.
Havertz holds the ball up really, really well, and Trossard is as quick, if not quicker, than Raheem Sterling. I don't know where it's come from that people think that Raheem Sterling is still a threat over the top. He's not Martinelli. He's basically Jack Grealish in an Arsenal shirt right now. He stands in front of a man and barely goes behind them. Like, if he actually did that, then that's totally fine. But that is bollocks. He doesn't do that. Trossard does that way better than him. And I think it's just nitpicky to say that Sterling, of those three, Havertz is on a run of scoring at the Emirates and has been one of our better players this season. And Trossard is an absolute gunman. And we're saying that one of those two has to come off instead of Stinky Sterling, who's done absolutely in a Chelsea shirt and is now bringing that to Arsenal. Like, that's the argument I'm trying to make.
No, my point is that I know you might say that, and I know maybe Sterling's been playing poorly for you. But I don't agree or believe that his game is like ball to feet and just lay it off and do whatever. You're still going to get more threat, right? This is just my opinion, over the top with Sterling than Trossard. I don't think Trossard's game is necessarily like that. I do agree that Trossard's a better player, right? And if you had 11, I would take off Sterling and bring on Martinelli or whatever. But you did see when Trossard came off for Martinelli, who's a much better player, in my opinion, than Sterling, younger, got more speed. I'm not saying Sterling's the same level of speed. I just don't think Sterling offers you anything other than the ball over the top, right? He's rubbish at a lot of those other things. And Trossard may be better at those other things and offer something over the top, but I don't think he offers as much over the top as Sterling would have. So I'm just saying I would have taken off Trossard, and if you're going to and bring on your defensive sub, or take off Sterling and Trossard, bring on Martinelli and your defensive sub. Because Martinelli, out of all of the options,
assuming that we're going to go
the most over the top. Yeah, but
that's going to go and counter attack, which we haven't done.
That's what I think the 10 should do.
The other two times that we've had a man sent off, we haven't gone counter attacking. We haven't turned into Man United and tried to slap the ball over for Rashford. That's not how we've been playing, and we didn't even try and play it in that game. So that's assuming that we would want to play a counter attacking style, which we did not do. We still tried to attack. We still tried to contain the ball, still tried to have possession and win in our way. And if you're saying,
where did your big chances come from, though? Where did your big chances come from?
That was not a counter attack. That wasn't a counter attack. That was dispossessing them quickly, getting the ball to Gabby Martinelli, who slapped it straight into the goalkeeper. If that was Trossard on the ball, I guarantee it goes in. If it's Sterling in the ball, it goes into Rose Ed.
Trossard finishing, I agree. If Trossard was in that finishing position, I would have much more confidence in him tucking it away. I agree completely. I don't believe he would have gotten himself in that situation. He doesn't have the speed like Martinelli, or even, again, you're not going to agree with Sterling. So I think that's the only way I can see someone.
Give me the evidence of Sterling doing that in the last season and a half, please.
No, I mean, I think there are plenty of examples with Chelsea where he was on the counter. That was the way they played him. He was rubbish. His finishing was poor. Agree with you on that completely. I wouldn't even gone anywhere near him if I was the board, right, or whatever.
That was exactly my point.
But my point is that's still his style, right? Or that's still going to be the style that he's most effective. His finishing is a separate issue, right? But anyway, regardless, let's go on to the last contentious topic around this is the disciplinary stuff. Obviously, there's been a lot of stats. You love the stats, right? I know you always pull out the stats when it's Man United time. So the stats on the Arsenal time is 3 red cards this season, 18 red cards under Arteta. The big question, and people have been saying, is do Arsenal actually have a disciplinary record, or are you extremely unlucky with the refs giving you unfair red cards? Where do you think the truth lies with this point?
Both are correct. We have a disciplinary issue, and we are being screwed because Newcastle. And answer me fairly: do you think we are a dirtier team than Newcastle? Yes or no?
No, absolutely not. Newcastle are a rugby
team. Do you think we're anywhere? Do you think we're even anywhere near them?
I don't think so. Well, all right, so here's my opinion. You want my honest opinion on it, right?
Go ahead.
I think you guys do little niggly, housery things in like a time-wasting-y type of thing, but I don't think that's a negative, right? That's not a criticism. I think Man City have been doing that kind of stuff for seasons and got away with it. Do I think you're dirty, like people are trying to maybe make out, right? Bolton, football, whatever. No way. I don't think you're like that. Yeah. I think you're physical and you've got big guys, but I don't think you cross the line in a way that, Joe Linton's coming and, uppercutting someone.
Or Bruno G's, Bruno G's players in the head.
Yeah.
Like,
elbow and Dons in the head. I don't think you do that. No, I don't think you do that. But I do think what's clearly happened is the refs have zoned in on you guys for the little dark artsy type things that Man City got away with, and the spotlight's on you.
Still get away with. Still
do, yeah. But you guys don't. So with that part, I will agree. I think it's unfair because you can point to some other teams doing something similar and they're getting away with it. But at the same time, the spotlight's been on you. You got contentious red cards early in the season, kind of back to back for, even though I think they were unfair, the same kind of thing. So I do think I agree with you. I think the truth is
it's both.
There is a bit of a disciplinary issue, but I think again it's going to rile you up again for the Saliba point. Bit of naivety, really. And that could be also put out Arteta where he's got to go.
I would say yes. Team
we've been getting red cards
because people would Arteta could go and say to his team, right? And I don't know why he hasn't, but he could go and say to the team, right, we're being over by everyone right now. He could do the George Graham speech that video went around afterwards, right? And said the referees hate us. They're going to hate us forever. We are Arsenal. It's just in our DNA that everyone for some reason hates us. You guys have got to be on your best behaviour. He could go and do that, right? And then I would, if we still did it, I would say there is some serious naivety in the team. I don't think he's actually said that to anyone though. It still happens too frequently for me to think that he's actually told people to do that because he's pretty ruthless in the fact that if he asks you to do something and you don't do it, you ain't touching the pitch again, right? So, for example, I would expect Trossard to not play or get dropped, or Rice to get dropped, or Saliba to get dropped after doing something stupid because they didn't follow his word, right? He hasn't done that. So my belief is he has not told them not to do that and that the spotlight is on them. I think he's probably used it as a way to rile up our players more and say, everyone's against you. We've got to be better than everyone else, right? That kind of is what I think Arteta would probably go and do from the experience of watching him on, the various different documentaries and just his comment, his interviews and stuff, right? So I don't think he's told anyone that. So I think it is naivety from him because he hasn't told anyone to do that. I think he's told our players to keep playing the way they play and whatever happens, happens. And maybe that's just the way he wants to be a martyr and that's the way he wants to do it. We're going to end up losing the league again and he's going to come back and point at the end of the season and say, you see what you lot did to us? You wouldn't let us play our football even though Newcastle have got away with it. Man City have got away with it before. That's how you wanted to do it. That's fine, right? But at the end of the day, no one's going to take that when we look back on it in 20 years and we've got 0 league titles, 0 Champions Leagues. No one's going to look back and feel pride in the fact that we were strong and stood up against the PGMOL. No, they're going to say you should have bent over backwards to do whatever you could to keep them off our back so that we could go and win the Premier League. So I agree with you. There is naivety from him. But at the same time, we have been unfairly targeted. All right. And everyone can get your little violins out and whatever else. But whenever it happens to anyone else, they all cry. So I'm allowed to cry too. And I think I'm not saying every other team, right? And I'm sure there are teams in the league that can come up to me and say, we've had it way worse than you. And I will totally concede that. That's
probably
fine.
Wolves. That's about it.
There are definitely teams that have had it worse than us. Maybe Nottingham Forest fans would complain about it as well at some point, because I know they were getting all antsy about it last season, right? There are certainly teams that could come up to me and say that, and I would say fine. But Man City, defo can't. Newcastle definitely can't, right? Those two teams have got away with far worse and has led to way better results and outcomes for the two of them. And what do you know? They're both owned by massive oligarchs who have paid the referees in our league to go and referee matches over there, right? That's not a coincidence. I'm telling you, allegedly, I'm getting my tinfoil hat again. I might have to buy one. I'm going to change it. Instead of a war hat like Grizz, I'm going to have a tinfoil hat just for the special conspiracy segment. But there's no coincidence that it's the two of them that have got away with it. Right? Todd Bowley's Chelsea ain't getting away with it. There's something going on, man. I'm telling you, there's something going on. Allegedly, I don't want to get sued. Allegedly, there's something going on. But there's no coincidence that in the same week that we get someone sent off in a contentious decision again to lose us 3 points, as what? I think we were bookies' favourites before that game. Somehow we've become bookies' favourites to win the league, right? As bookies' favourites, we get screwed the same week that the 4-time winning in a row team gets the dodgiest decision that was never given last season to win them the game when they played absolute terrorist football in that match. That is not a coincidence. It cannot keep happening.
Yeah, I think the numbers are not good reading, right? Your red cards and stuff, both this season and overall under Arteta, it's not looking good, bruv. But at the same time, there are definitely some caveats to it. I do think, maybe a quarter at least, maybe a third of those red cards have been slightly harsh. I can remember Gabby Martinelli one where he got 2 yellow cards in the same phase of play. Which was absolutely ridiculous. So there have been quite. As well? Yep, I remember he got screwed over, even though it wasn't him time wasting. I remember that one. It sticks in my head when it's an Asian dude getting screwed over. I'm going to remember that one till pop my clogs. But yeah, you've been definitely screwed over.
You saw Mosquera literally, man, people getting choked on the ground. That is what's happening, and there's no red cards for none of them.
Yeah, so this is going to be a hilarious episode for all of you guys to listen and watch, because there's just an absolute monumental amount of bleeps that Johnson's been popping out throughout this episode. So yeah, it's just literally going to be bleep and then a word, because you've lost your head. But I understand it. I think I agree with you generally. The truth lies somewhere in the middle, to be honest. So. Yeah, I will say, though, that is going to be something you guys got to address, because you can't keep playing with 10 men, right? Results like this are going to happen. You get away with it at City, get away with it at Brighton, but you haven't got away with it here. And coincidentally, or it's not a coincidence, those 3 games are the only 3 games you've dropped points in. So you've got to sort it out one way or the other, whether it's your fault or someone else's. It's something that you can do something about to a certain extent. All right, let's get on to the very, very quickly go over the Shakhtar game. 1-0 Arsenal in the Champions League. Looking pretty decent in that now. I think you've got 7 points, so you're in the top 8 at the moment. So that's good. The performance wasn't fantastic. I think it was an own goal, right, by the goalie. I think it's Martinelli has a strike, bounces off the post. One of those Emi Martinez ones from those couple of years back where it's a goalie own goal. You win 1-0. Trossard did get a penalty saved in the second half, so it could have been 2-0, but it ends 1-0. First, quickly, just a couple of points. First one, do you have a problem with Trossard taking a penalty? Because I know some people were like, Havertz should be taking it, and I think when Odegaard and Saka haven't been on the pitch or they've given it up on the pitch, generally it's Havertz who takes the pen. Were you upset that Trossard took it And obviously, I know you're more likely to be considering he missed, but do you think Havertz should have taken it?
Arteta's been pretty clear that he lets them choose on the pitch. And as a result, I think that's why you see Arsenal's penalty takers kind of shift around depending on who's on the pitch or not. So if Trossard's come out and basically said that I want to take it and he's missed it, it's on him. And I don't think you can argue really, like, of course, we're just talking about how he's basically contributed to Saliba getting a red card in the previous game. But I think you can't look at Trossard and say, oh, on a one-on-one situation, which is what a penalty is, that he's not very likely to score. So, I mean, unless I'm forgetting him having like a really terrible penalty record, I don't think it's crazy if I ignore the fact that he missed and just look at, oh, Trossard's taken a penalty. I don't think it's mental that he took it. Like, in hindsight, of course, I can say anybody but him take it because he bloody missed it. That's fine. Like, I'd rather bloody David Raya take it if I know Trossard's going to miss it. Like, of course. But if I just like try and be fair, it's not mental that he would go and take a penalty. Like, he's one of our best finishers, if not our best finisher. Kind of makes sense. Just don't bloody miss it next time.
It's not obviously a terrible it's not obviously a terrible decision. There are a couple of, at the risk of riling you up again, there are a couple of things that people have said that I've read and listened to. Havertz has 100% penalty conversion rate. Apparently, if you don't include the penalty shootout friendly miss that he had against us in pre-season, which I don't think you should. So that's the argument on Havertz's side, and then the other argument is, even though I rate Trossard very highly, you know I do, and I know you do, he's playing a bit stinky at the moment. So I think that those are the couple of caveats that people have thrown out there. But I agree with you. Generally speaking, Trossard is not obviously a bad penalty taker. I'm sure he's probably a really good one if you look at his record, right, and you do the research on that. I'm sure he scores much more than he misses with penalties. But I guess hindsight is one of those things again. Knowing now that he's missed it, you would have gone, probably Havertz should have taken it, and Trossard was playing badly, so it was maybe a bit of a risk. But at the same time, you know, I remember the charity penalty Havertz got in his early days at Arsenal, and everyone was, you know, hammering him about that. You know, if Trossard's playing poorly, a penalty could turn his form around. So I understand the logic behind it. All right, let's enough of the penalty talk. Then let's go on to the last bit on the Shakhtar game. Like you mentioned it a bit earlier, it wasn't the greatest performance. Do you think the win, though, at least will change some of the morale, I guess, after the loss to Bournemouth going into the Liverpool game? Or do you think it will kind of bleed over since the performance wasn't so good?
I think it will minimally improve morale, but not as much as battering them 5-0 could have. So I don't think you can say that we're going to go into this Liverpool game with super positive morale because of the result with Shakhtar. I think it lifted it slightly because it's better to go into the Liverpool game with a win than it is to lose to bloody Bournemouth. But again, we didn't play well, and it's a 1-0 win at home. So minimally better, but still probably not enough for what we're going to come up against with Liverpool. So,
yeah, I agree, man. I think that there's a slight danger that the vibe around the win was still kind of slightly negative as well because the performance wasn't so good. But like you said, you know, at least it's a win. So you've addressed it. It's not like back-to-back defeats or back-to-back disappointing results. You've at least addressed kind of that form issue around the team. I guess the only variable is Saliba did play in that game. So you're obviously not even going to have the same team that you had against Shakhtar, against Liverpool. You're obviously going to have to shift things around. So I don't know how much you can really take from that Shakhtar game. I guess it's just simply put, you won. It's better to go in off a win than a loss or a negative result. But yeah, 1-0. At least you're looking pretty in the Champions League, to be honest. I think if you get probably one more win, you're probably guaranteed to qualify overall. And if you get a few more positive results, I reckon you should have top 8 sewn up pretty soon. But anyway, let's move on to the preview section then. God, that was a mammoth Arsenal section. The Arsenal viewers and listeners are going to really enjoy digging their teeth into that hour or so of that.